Hey, what's up, everybody? We back. Welcome to the Conversations with Cogee show. And this is I've been falsely accused. You know, we definitely do this show. We definitely bring this show in because we want to show the families of even the inmates that, hey, we do care, because sometimes the family will exalt themselves, you know, with funds and everything they need to do to be able to help the exonerees. So, you know, me and Jeffrey definitely reach out to do this show. And like I said, you know, we have an attorney that also rolls with me, Mr. Warren. He's in right now. Let him know who you are, Mr. Warren.
Good afternoon, Warren Geller. I'm a partner at Cofer Geller in Durham, and I've done about 2,500 criminal defense cases. So I wanted to come in and talk about exoneration of the innocent and the falsely accused today.
That's right. Now, Mr. Warren, let me ask you a question. What did you think about the show when you was riding in today? What did you hear?
You know, it was one of, or a few rather, of many examples that you see across the country, not just the United States, but I suppose we'll be talking pretty much about what happens in the United States today. And those are just 2-3 sad examples of what unfortunately is going on every day.
Of millions.
I mean, we can't count them because
Right.
you don't know. There could be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. You just wouldn't know exactly because a lot of times people never are exonerated.
And if the courthouse is open right now, which it is until 5, so they tallying up right now as we speak, right?
That's right. There's about 50,000 misdemeanor cases, 20 some odd thousand felonies in Clark County prosecuted downtown. So of those, you got to know that there's going to be several handfuls of people who are falsely accused going on right now.
That's right. So I want to ask you before we move forward, we're going to take a break for a minute, then we'll be right back in. And we got Miss Hannan. She'll be in with us. You know, with Miss Hannan, she has 2 sons in prison. Now, you know the toll this can take on a bank account.
Absolutely.
With 2 sons in prison.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? What don't people understand about if you deliberately, I always go back to this, if you deliberately out selling drugs, shooting, doing something, what don't they understand about what it's going to take to hold on to a lawyer? But what don't people understand about an innocent parent who has a child that just get caught up in the innocent and they don't have the funds to pay you all? What don't people understand about that payment?
Well, a lot of times what happens is if somebody doesn't have the ability to hire a good defense team that's going to be able to devote the time to their defense,
right,
then they're going to have the public defender system. And the public defender systems across the United States vary widely. I will say here in Clark County, the public defender system is pretty good. It's one of the better ones in the nation because it's got better funding.
But they are overworked.
That is correct. The public defenders in Clark County sometimes have caseloads, if you include the cases in Warren, upwards of 300 clients.
Right.
So what can happen is unfortunately they may not always have the time, even though their intentions are great, to devote to every single detail of each case they have because there just aren't as many hours in the day.
So sometimes, you know, you being an attorney, I can ask you this. So sometimes the public defenders, even though they do the best they can do, and like you said, if they overbooked and they can't really go deep into a case to really see what happened and they just got to deal the card that's dealt right there on the spot, they get a real bad name as, oh, you got a public defender. I know you're going to prison. How untrue is that?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that because a lot of the public defenders get a very bad rap that they don't deserve, and you see it in movies. You see it in, for example, My Cousin Vinny, a famous movie. The public defender couldn't even get a sentence out, and that's really just not the case of the reality of the situation. Public defenders are like any lawyers. It's a mixed bag. But by far and away, generally, they're not going to have the funding and the resources available that you're going to see with, an expensive private attorney. And unfortunately, there's only so many resources to go around. I'd like to see more resources, devoted to public defense, though.
Right. Okay. Now let me ask you this. I'm going to give you one more, then we're going to take a break, and we'll get Miss Hannan in, and me and you will give her this interview.
Sure.
So I want to ask you this. Sometime, do you think in movies, and as we've been seeing with public defenders, which a lot of people do lose with public defenders.
Sure.
And we have those who had great public defenders and got them through. Do you feel sometime if a guy comes in and he has hellacious case that he's battling that's the made news and everything, but he can't afford you guys, your law firm, and he has a public defender, do you think sometime that plays a role too with his sentencing far as the jury and with the judge? Just in your opinion.
It can. It certainly can.
Okay.
The jury is not supposed to know whether the defendant is represented by a public defender.
But they will know. If they know the public defender, you'll know what he is.
A lot of times they can figure that out because they'll be looking at the defendant who's clearly poor. There's signs of it. For instance, the jail will just, if you can't afford a suit, they'll put you in a donated suit.
That's
and it's
right.
obvious. People are looking. They said, the guy's not even wearing his own clothing.
Right.
And so they know the guy didn't have $40,000, $50,000 sitting around to hire an attorney, so they can figure it out.
And then sometime a prosecutor will say, well, he's over there right now, everybody, with his public defender, and he's trying to claim innocence. Now, but that's strategy.
Well, they're
not. You know how me and you do it.
Right. They're not supposed to say that, but they sometimes will slip up and do that.
I've heard it before. Right.
Yeah. It will now. Not in front of the jury. Now, they may say that at the other court hearings, but then they'll mess up unintentionally, and they might make a comment like that, and then the jury thinks, so let's say it's a robbery, murder type case. The jury is thinking, well, a wealthy person doesn't need to go around murdering people for a pair of shoes, that kind of thing. But if they think the person's poor, then subconsciously they may think, well, he's probably more desperate, and as a consequence that he might have been a little bit more likely to commit this crime. That's why it's supposed to be kept a secret.
And then if we let him out and he already ain't got nothing going for him, look what's left for him to do again.
Exactly.
So sometimes those, like you said, the circumstance, what we're trying to say today is your circumstances sometimes can sway the situation, right?
Beyond a doubt. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Okay.
Absolutely
well, Miss Hannan, this is what she said she's been going through. And when we come back in, we're going to take a break for a minute. We're going to come back and me and you will do what we do. All right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Words of encouragement to our listeners.
Absolutely. You listen, keep your head up. If you ever find yourself accused of something, you want to talk to a lawyer first, not the police first.
That's right.
And you can iron everything out with your defense team and then figure out what you're going to talk to law enforcement about.
Okay, there it is. So everybody, that's Mr. Warren J. Geller, who's definitely on my defense team in here. And we definitely will bring some great information. We got Miss Hannan. She'll be in a second. You don't want to miss this. But we're going to give Miss Hannan some love music. We're going to give her some hold on music. We're going to let her know that we do care about her. And we ain't going to turn our back and leave you. We got you back. All right? All right, we'll be right back in. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations with Cogee. I'm your host, Cogee. Hey, this is our I've Been Falsely Accused show where, like I said, we definitely bring it. We definitely fight for the underdogs. We definitely fight for the respect of the underdogs. I got my partner in with me today, Mr.
Warren Geller from Cofer Geller in Durham,
who's definitely doing a great job. Warren, I want to ask you a question coming back in right now. When people go through these situations and they feel like, well, nobody's going to believe that I'm innocent, and they already down on themselves and they already feeling like this is a lost case, words of encouragement to that person that feels like, man, nobody, on this certain date that they got me, even I don't remember back then where I was. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
Those kind of cases.
Right.
What would you say to that person?
Well, yeah, it's becoming less of a problem in the future because people's alibis can be established better with all this technology we have, right? Because you've got your text messages that show who you were talking to at that time. They can figure out where you were.
That's right.
But you go back in the past and somebody says, 4 years ago on such and such date, you committed this crime, that kind of thing. There's no way you're going to remember where you were, and it's hard to establish an alibi.
Right.
So you got to be patient, and what you got to do is you've got to painstakingly look at your calendar, go back where you can, and do the best job with your defense team to build an alibi. But you're absolutely correct. It's not an easy thing to do, particularly the further back you go when there's less technology that says where you would have been.
Then it's literally a dogfight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay, now what I want to do, because, this is the way I like you being on the show, because this is the way me and you, we really opened up, and the public like when me and you do this. We really open the public up to real life, real court life. Right. Okay, now what people don't understand is how to come and attain an attorney. That's what we're going to talk about right now. But the way we're going to do this right now, you going to run the show. And Miss Hannan, welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much.
Miss Hannan, you heard about your two sons. You want to speak on it a little bit?
Yes, I like to. I have two sons who have been incarcerated most of their young adult life. Basically, they have been raised up in prison. My oldest son, Gregory Thomas, he went into the system at the age of 14, and he's 50 now. And my son, Mahmoud Parks, he went into the system at 14, and he's 31 now. And it's all been minor crimes. They didn't hurt anyone. They didn't actually steal anything.
Right.
So it was like basically minor crimes, nonviolent crimes.
That went over and above.
Yeah.
In the court system.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is what I want to do, Miss Hannan. This is really what I want to do. So right now, Warren, can you pull your mic up just a little bit to you so you can speak more? Okay, now this is what I want to do right now, because a lot of our audience that's listening all around the world right now, we want to say hello to everybody. How y'all doing today? Now, this is what I want to do. A lot of people don't understand how to obtain a attorney. Now, Miss Hannan, I want you to tell Warren right now. Now, picture yourself being in Warren's office right now. Warren, I want you to take her through the steps of what you would say to her about her 2 sons. I want to give the audience a glimpse into obtaining an attorney. This is the way you need to be. It needs to be done. These are the things that's going to need to be asked. What proper things should she bring to you to come and see you? What would make it easy on the attorney? How you like it?
That's an excellent question. The first step in the process is determining what kind of lawyer you need.
Okay, right.
So obviously, right, you've got lawyers that do trusts and estates.
And she needs
you've got criminal defense.
A defense attorney for this situation.
Right, and then within the category of defense attorney, if you've got a loved one who was already serving a prison sentence, what you're looking for is what's called post-conviction relief.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's say that let's say, presuming there's nothing wrong with the case. No, that doesn't sound like that's necessarily the case here, but let's say the conviction is on firm ground. If that's the case, you may be looking for an attorney that would go to the parole board on your behalf. So it could be a parole board attorney who would advocate for the reasons why, in this case, your sons should be given parole. Or if you think there was something wrong in the case, like some evidence wasn't brought to light, the attorney missed something, things like that, then you're looking for what's called a post-conviction attorney. Mm-hmm. So what I'd want you to do, if you were coming into my office, I'd ask you some basic questions. I'd say,
Here we go, everybody.
Where were your children convicted? What was the charge? Do you have the discovery, the police reports, anything like that, maybe from their attorney if your boys had authorized you to take a look at those? Mm-hmm. And then if you're going the post-conviction route, the route where you're saying that something was overlooked, I'd want you to be able to point out to me in the discovery, if it's in the police report or if it's in a transcript, something that was overlooked, something that was missed. Mm-hmm. Or if there was some other evidence that you had and tried to bring to the legal counsel's attention and they overlooked that, I'd want to know what that is. Because if new evidence comes to light, sometimes you can get a new trial. Mm-hmm. Conversely, if you wanted to go the parole route, what we'd be looking for is indications that your sons are ready to re-enter into society and they've got a stable situation. So, for instance, we do see sometimes some defendants who find themselves in the criminal justice system unfortunately suffer from mental illness. And what we want to be able to show to the parole board is that they've got a loved one in place who's going to supervise their medication and that sort of thing. So, because they're going to be concerned if they go off their medication, as an example, that can cause a new case to unfold. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, for circumstances like that, you'd have to decide which of those 2 routes you wanted to go, and then you'd want to bring in information that's relevant. And, of course, the attorney should help you do that, and they should be able to speak knowledgeably about either route you want to take.
Okay, that was great advice. Now, what we want to do, Ms. Hannan, now you tell Warren, you tell him what you in his office for right now.
Okay, I'm in the office right now for all 3 of those.
Okay.
Yeah, all 3. I could use all 3 of those for my boys.
Okay.
First of all, Mahmoud was 14, and he was tried as an adult for snatching a purse. First time being arrested.
Okay.
He gave the purse back. They called me to come pick him up. I didn't go pick him up because he had been in like crazy things before, but
and she wanted him to learn a lesson.
And I wanted him to
learn
a lesson, so I said, "Oh well, I'm not going to bother." I went back to sleep. I said, "I'll get him tomorrow." I didn't see my son until he was 23. They tried him as an adult. Then I found out lately that a minor could only be tried as an adult for murder or something like that. That was just his misdemeanor or something like that. If they told me to come get him, it wasn't really that serious. They wanted me to come pick him up, so all of a sudden he's tried as an adult. So that's the first thing,
Absolutely. That's would be called the certification process, where they take a juvenile and they certify them to be treated as an adult. And that's going to be a little different from state to state. So it sounds like that took place in a state other than Nevada where we are now. But you're absolutely right. There are certain things here, and I'm sure that would be the case in those states, that are automatic certifications, like, as you mentioned, a murder, a rape, something that's real severe like this.
Severe.
But if someone who grabs a purse, runs off, and ultimately returns it, I would agree with you that that does not sound like something that would rise to the level for a 14-year-old boy to be treated as a man in a court of law and suffer, it sounds like, better half of a decade in prison for that.
Yeah. And even when he became 18 and he went before the parole board, they still wouldn't let him out. They kept him on, and so they transported him from the juvenile division into the adult division, and he went as far as Sing Sing, Attico, and all up there with the hard criminal murderers and everything. And he told me that they taught him things, because he was raised up in the prison system. And then when he came out at 23, he was wild, he and then he was frustrated, and he was confused, and it's like he said, well, I might as well go back to jail. He was always saying that, and because he didn't know anything else, and so he ended up snatching a purse, and not a purse. He ended up trying to rob somebody, and they call it robbery 1 or something, because he didn't have a weapon.
Okay.
They didn't find a weapon on him. So then they placed him on Rikers Island. Then he got stabbed in the eye by an inmate, and we went to trial for that. And I heard the correction officer said, well, she saw it happening, but she couldn't do anything because she didn't have no backup. So the inmate who stabbed my son got away free, and it was like my son stabbed himself. So then after that, he went before the judge later to be sentenced. The judge gave him 15 more years.
But they said also that they found out through evidence that he stabbed himself in the eye, right?
Yeah, they
Right.
was accusing
I'm going to help
him.
out with a story.
They were accusing him of stabbing himself.
Now, can I say this, Miss Hannan, real quick? I want to jump in on this one thing. Was he on, when he was out before he tried to rob something again, was he on medication at that time?
Mahmoud is not the one that was on medication. Gregory's the one with the medication problem.
Okay.
Mahmoud was just
So Mahmoud just was surviving.
Yes.
Right.
So right now, he's in he was in one prison. Then they transferred him recently to what's the name of another prison, which is like further up in New York. You know what I'm saying? Instead of bringing him down, because he should be up for parole now, because he's been there over 11 years. He was in there for 9/11, and not only is he like Afro-American, he's also Muslim. So they were coming after him in two directions.
Oh yeah.
I could double dose, and especially when 9/11 became, he really got it. So like now he's saying to me like, Mom, he said, I don't know if I'm ever coming out. It doesn't look like I'm going to get out of here, So that's the sad story.
So with him losing hope again in prison, he's more likely to do something again because he already feel like he's never getting out anyway, right?
Yeah, but he did tell me that he was studying. He said, Mom, I'm in the library. I'm studying in the law. I'm reading. I'm studying. He said, I know so much about my case and everything. And then the next letter I got from him, they had locked him down, so he couldn't study anymore.
So what would you like to ask Warren? Like you in his office right now, what do you want to know from Warren right now? What advice or what help are you looking to him for right now?
I would like to ask him what could be done to reverse my son's case back, because I feel that in the beginning was
the railroad,
the beginning of the railroad, and how can it be reversed, because it shouldn't have gotten this far.
Well, one of the things I'd want to know is whether or not he entered a negotiation in the case or if the case went to trial.
It went to trial.
Okay, so it went to trial. That would open it up for more opportunities, because there's going to be a big transcript, more opportunities for us to put that attorney under a bit of a microscope and be able to see whether he or she, who defended your son, had really gotten into the case in depth and explored everything and every piece of evidence that could have been presented to that jury. Now, sometimes it's not the attorney's fault either. Sometimes the prosecutor withholds evidence. Sometimes the detectives who investigate a case, or the street, the cops on the street, they don't preserve evidence that they could have collected, surveillance videos, things like that. So we'd want to look at the case file and get a transcript, which if it wasn't already drafted, then we could request that one be drafted if the trial was recorded. And you go through and you read that, compare it to the initial investigative reports, and see if something was overlooked or something wasn't presented that otherwise might have changed that jury's mind.
Can I ask you a question, please, Warren?
Certainly.
How long he's been in there and what he's been going through, and like you said, if he was tried wrong as a youngster, could this be time served? How much time he's done?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Let's say you had a really good issue on appeal to try to undo the conviction, and the prosecutor looked at it and thought, it's about a coin flip's chance that they're able to undo this conviction. Theoretically, depending on the laws of that state, I practice in Nevada, that's New York, but they could say, you know what, let's just call it a day, and we'd be happy to just negotiate it out at time served at that point. So sometimes that is going to be an option depending on the laws of the state you're in.
I have another question, but when they know that they have made a mistake, they're not willing to step up to the plate most of the time because they know that he was a minor. And the second time that he got arrested, I think they tried him with the New York law for 3 strikes.
I see. Right. So they may very well, a lot of states have something like that, like you mentioned, 3 strikes
That's right.
and you're out.
And they forgot the fact that he was a minor and they tried him as an adult.
And they
put that on him.
Okay.
And so the second time, they just going to say, 3 strikes, 15 years.
I see. That may very well have been how they treated it, the conviction when he was certified as a first strike. Yeah. And most states have a law like that. Nevada, they call it the habitual criminal statute. But it's the same idea that the legislature's doing.
Well, they started the problem from the beginning by me not going to get him, and they kept him and tried him as an adult, and that should have never happened because it wasn't that serious if I could have gone and picked him up.
I agree. It doesn't sound like it was.
So the second time, they made another mistake by trying him by the 3 strikes law, when it should have normally just been his first time arrested.
Right. It sounds like they counted the juvenile conviction. That had it been stayed in the juvenile court, he wouldn't have had the strike.
That's right.
Okay. Can I interject for 1 second? And Ms. Hannan, I want you to stay right where you are mentally with what you're going to ask Warren. But Warren, now this is when me and you going to go back and forth.
All
okay. Right now, I'm the prosecutor, you the defense.
All right.
Because I just heard something. Why would we reverse that when we let him out? He did 2 things. Again, this one wasn't on medication. Why should we let him out when we let him out and he couldn't survive and he ended up back in here with us?
Well,
you know how it's Ms. Hannan, this is not going against you.
I understand what you're doing.
We gotta do, because we want the audience to hear and listen to his expertise, right, and how he would convince me, to give this another look at from Warren's point of view. Go ahead, Warren.
Absolutely. If the original conviction was infirm, it was not on valid legal grounds, they did something wrong, then he didn't have any, or the state of New York rather, didn't have any authority to have him on probation in the first place.
Anyway.
Exactly.
Right.
So for the probation officer or the parole officer to come up and say, oh, you violated your parole because we found drugs in your house, or because you stayed out past curfew, because you didn't turn in your community service, he wouldn't have been on parole in the first place.
It would have been time served.
Or he would have been exonerated from the get-go. Exactly. So I don't know if these other things that your son was accused of were what they call technical violations or new crimes. I'm not sure.
But even with me, I would come back and say, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but we didn't hold him for 15 years on that one. We let him out. He came back twice.
Well, that if he came back twice for committing a new offense, an actual new criminal offense, then you actually are correct. Then he would have to stand trial or negotiate those new charges.
Right.
But I'm saying if they're what's called technical violations, if they pulled him back off of parole for something that was not a new offense,
that shouldn't have never been.
He wouldn't have been on parole in the first place.
That's right.
Right. See, that's why we do this, me and Warren.
Right.
That's why we do this. But I'm still going to come back and ask you right now, where do you see the falsely accused at anywhere in this case?
Well, I didn't review the case file, but what it sounds like to me is that, if I'm putting words in your mouth here, man, but it sounds to me like one of your biggest concerns is that they treated a 14-year-old boy like an adult.
Bingo.
So I don't know whether or not he snatched a purse or didn't. I wasn't there, so I can't speak to that.
So you're saying, as far as age, that was falsely accused based on his age.
It may have as well been falsely accused
Right.
if they were willing to pick him up at the scene. Maybe they didn't have strong evidence. I don't know.
Well, what would you say to a parent, Warren, right now, where like Miss Hannan just said, they said, come and get your child, and she said, no, I'm going to leave him and teach him a lesson.
Well, yeah, the reality is I'd err on the side of caution and teach him the lesson yourself as a parent.
And go get your child.
Because the legal system can get away from you, and that lesson could cost you a lot of money, or even worse, what it cost you in this case, unfortunately. And I'm not saying this to make you feel that you didn't know at the time. You were trying to be a good mom.
But we teaching people
but it got
with
away
the show.
from you. Right.
But the thing about it is, well, if you're going to leave him here, you must not be too worried anyway.
That's the way it could be
That's
interpreted.
The way, bingo.
Right.
Not saying her.
Right.
We giving the real. This is the real.
Right. That's the way it could be interpreted. But we know in this case, mom just wanted him to learn a lesson.
She just was fed up and said, hey, you got to learn, because I can't always be there for you.
Right.
Okay, Miss Hannan, go ahead.
Well, let me say something. At that time, they had in New York the big boy something. What is that? Well, I was a single mother, so I needed some help with my boys. I had
Big
4
brothers
boys.
and sisters?
Yeah,
Okay.
they had that. So I tried to join that for Mahmoud because I didn't want him to get in trouble. So I went to the court before the judge, and the judge made him a temporary something of the court for use, so this way they would have jurisdiction over him, that he wouldn't get in any trouble. So I said, okay. I said, because he can't stay at my house now. He doesn't want to listen to me. He's smoking weed and stuff, and I have no control over him, but I don't want him to get in trouble.
You tried
so
to get him a mentor.
Yes,
Right.
yes. So they put him in Brooklyn, and he was supposed to have a curfew to be in at a certain time and everything. And this particular day when it happened, Mahmoud was not supposed to have been over there. They allowed him to be hanging out. They weren't taking care of their responsibility of the curfew to make sure that he was in and everything. So that's what happened.
So, Miss Hannan, he was awarded to the state of these keepers who was supposed to oversee him out of prison. That's what she's saying, Warren.
Okay.
He was awarded, the state awarded somebody
to kind of oversee him.
Yeah, like
right.
your big brother thing,
Right,
because
okay.
I needed help, so this wouldn't happen. And they made it happen.
That's unfortunately the state, a lot of times the tools that they put in place to try to fix someone, like the prison system, as we just mentioned, makes things worse, because a lot of times you're around bad elements, or they just don't have the resources to monitor somebody. So
and they didn't take any responsibility for it. They didn't even.
But sometimes, Miss Hannan, and we've been doing so many of these shows, and I done heard it all from exonerees, from everybody. Sometimes it goes back to what Warren said, when they put you out, they throw you back out of the ocean and throw you on land, and they expecting you to do what you need to do on your own, because we can supervise you here in prison, in jail. We don't have no problem with that. But if we're gonna let you out and we're gonna give you the responsibility to have responsibility for yourself, that's almost like, I can't even say the trap. It's not even really, we can't really say a trap, because what you do is based on what you done. The court didn't set you up to do that. So Warren, what would you say on that? It's more or less like,
yeah, it's getting into a deep conversation almost about free will.
Right, bingo. That's what I was going with it, free will.
Right, because
right.
But to be fair, everyone's born into a different circumstance.
Right.
You don't choose the DNA in your body, and which dictates the way your personality is going to be, and you don't choose where you're born.
That's right.
And so if you're born in a rough neighborhood, and particularly if you're born with a mental disorder, schizophrenia, or something like that on top of it.
That's what you're accustomed to.
Yeah, you're already starting with a really bad hand to play the game of life with. And so that's tough. And so it's easy to sit back and say, oh, well, yeah, this guy who otherwise was a schizophrenic, might have had low IQ, was born in a poor family. He went off and robbed somebody because he saw the older kids in the neighborhood doing it. That's a lot different than somebody who had other opportunities going off and doing something malicious. And sometimes the court system, you make attempts to highlight those things, but a lot of times they just breeze past that, because at the end of the day, they say, well, my first priority is to keep the community safe, and they won't look at those things. Now, some judges are better than others, though, of course.
So what would you think, Warren, would be something now that she's talked to you? And like I said, y'all going to talk a little bit more off there and everything, but as of now, us talking right now, what would be something that she probably should tell her son to start doing, as far as lining his case up, trying to get it right. Well, number one, we do need for him to, I say we because it's a part of this show and I'm a part of you and you're a part of me. We need him to, the best thing to do is stay out of trouble in jail.
That's absolutely
He need
right.
his jail record to be clean and free of drama, so when he get in front of the parole board, he can say, well, I am turning a corner and I haven't made a change. I haven't had any write-ups. I ain't had nothing going on with me this far. You know, I'm trying. I just need a little help.
That's exactly right.
Would that help you a little bit more?
It would, because you want to emphasize the programs they're in. Almost
Right.
any state prison or federal prison is going to have different programs, classes. You can get your GED, things like that. And you want to, of course, as Cogee said, avoid fights. But that's something that's also easier said than done, particularly in a state prison system where you're in there with a lot of people who are accused of violent offenses, because of the culture in the prison is definitely one. It's like the schoolyard on steroids. There's bullies in that prison, and if you don't stand up to yourself, your prison life can be a lot worse because you'll be seen as a mark.
That's right.
And so it's easy for me on the outside to say, don't get in a fight in prison.
Yeah.
But that could make your prison experience very tough if you don't defend yourself in the same token. So Cogee is absolutely correct. I always thought to myself, if God forbid I ever found myself in prison, I'd do anything I could to be in solitary confinement. I don't mean in a hole, but I mean where you're segregated from most of the other population to avoid that problem. You'd be boring. But to the extent that you could control it, at least you'd know that you weren't getting in fights and things like that.
And see, that's what I was going to ask you too. Do you think he ought to ask to be in? Because you can't ask to be in solitary confinement, right?
Yep, that's a tough call there too, because it is boring. Because you obviously don't have a lot of contact with other people, and humans want to socialize. We want to be in touch with people.
But he also wants to get out.
Right.
Now, me and you in the boardroom right now. We going across the table right now. And this is what I would say. Well, Warren, if he wants to get out, he done been in there this long. These are the circumstances that's left for him to get out. A good record.
Right.
Something to show he turned the corner.
Right. You're absolutely right. You'd want us to do the educational programs. You'd want to stay out of fights, that sort of thing. But all I'm saying is I've obviously visited people in prison who asked for my help, and it's easier said than done. I can't name names. Obviously, I've got attorney-client privilege.
No, right.
But what I can tell you, generally speaking, is people, depending on the facility they're in, will tell me, they'll say, look, I've got this fight incident, but the other guy hit me first. I defended myself because if I don't do that, I'm going to be marked as a target. So.
Well, one thing I did do, I got in touch with wrongful conviction in New York, and I sent all this paperwork and everything to them, and then I contacted them, and they told me that they will be contacting my son.
Good.
Okay, well, it's a good first step.
That is a good first
Right,
step. Yeah,
definitely.
Absolutely.
Just to get somebody to even look at the paperwork, that's a blessing.
So that's where it's at right now with him.
And they'll probably be able to look at his file and tell you where you should concentrate your efforts.
Right.
They may say, well, you know what, there was some evidence in this case to show that he might have been responsible, in which case let's focus on parole. Let's focus on the fact that he's changed. Or alternatively, they may say, hey, there's a problem with the proof in this case. Let's focus on undoing the conviction. So they'll be in a position, you'll have a trained eye looking at the file and can probably say which way you want to concentrate your efforts.
Even if they, like Warren said, if they can't find the loophole to get him out, we need to start focusing on turning a corner and being up for parole to get out. Even if he's still on paper, he's still free once he's out.
Well, I had contacted some lawyers in New York, and they wanted to charge me like $3,500 that I didn't have. That's when I went to the wrongful conviction. But they say they wanted to do the what was that?
A post-conviction relief. Yeah.
They wanted to go back to the beginning to study his history and knock out all the loopholes, and that would be the only way that they could probably reverse the.
That's probably true, but they also could potentially help you with the parole side. That wouldn't reverse it. He would still have that conviction. But, if you're dealing with a situation, you only have so many resources. Someone can look through the file and help you make the decision with the resources you have, which direction do I want to put them. But I think that going to the free agency there in New York that examines those, that was a very smart idea, because the type of people that work in places like that are usually very dedicated to the cause. They're not just going there to do a 9-to-5 and get paid. They probably could get paid better at other organizations, but go there because they believe in the cause and they want to help. So you'll probably get a very honest assessment of your son's chances through them.
And I was also thinking about having a lawyer bring to their attention that he should be up for parole right now, even if they want to overlook it because of the cover-up that he got stabbed in his eye, and they might not want him to even come out because that might be a lawsuit.
Right. There's always things that could be going on under the radar like that.
Right.
And just like any company, a state, just the same, is always concerned about liability. Nobody wants to get sued. And if
That's right. So they're not going to bring it to their attention if nobody...
Right.
And we got somebody that came in with Miss Hannan right now. Your name?
My name is Art.
All right. What has Miss Hannan been going through, and like, what have you seen with these cases that, you've been a concerned citizen of the show today and bringing a lot of facts out about a lot of stuff. What have you seen that's like, wow, I can't believe that, this is going on like this?
Well, any concerned citizen, any concerned parent, it's an uphill struggle for everybody because you have to first learn fundamentally what the system is all about.
That's right.
And then just like when a dentist examines your teeth, he wants to see how much tartar, how much the result of the cavities, about the extent of the corruption. And then once you are able to discriminate between what should be applied in the law and what's actually going on, then you first have a chance of clearing things up. And I've known Hannan for over a decade.
Okay.
And I know there's been a significant amount of communication between both sons, learning about the circumstances of the cases. And I know with Gregory, who's in Florida, we have some good news. He should be getting out in the very near future because of a very good attorney down in Florida.
Okay.
However, it's never easy. Everything is like you're crawling on your stomach.
That's right.
Step by step by step. And it's a combination being of a good team player between being a parent, a concerned citizen, and the one who's incarcerated, that you all have to hold hands together and gather strength from each other, knowing that you're going to get out of it eventually.
That's right. Okay. Thank you, Art. Definitely. So we're down to 5 minutes. So I got to come back to you. This is your playground right here, Warren. What would you say to this whole situation, and what would be your words of wisdom, to our listeners right now with Miss Hannan's case?
Yeah.
Parents, single moms with children.
Absolutely. Being a single mom, I can't speak to that, obviously, being a male, but that's probably one of the toughest tasks that we see in America. And unfortunately, single motherhood is on the rise. And so a lot of times you have women trying to raise young men and young women alone, and watching out for the criminal justice system has got to be one of your top priorities. Obviously, there's a lot of concerns a parent's going to have. And I understand, ma'am, why when you got that call from the police, you thought that it would probably be appropriate to teach them a lesson. I can't say that if I were a parent, I would have thought differently under the circumstances. I would have thought if they're already calling me to say, hey, come get this, is not going to be a real serious case.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and I would have made the same. I'm a lawyer, and I probably would have come to the same conclusion.
Right. Yeah.
Because you would think if it was something where...
Because you get tired, and especially if you're a single parent, it's
Right.
like, again, really? You giving them so?
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I would encourage everyone to be very, very vigilant, and you can't ever consider any case to be too small anymore, because unfortunately now in this digital age that we live, a criminal record can haunt you for decades to come. It can haunt you for a lifetime. They've got all these websites, mugshots.com and who'sarrested.com. And even if you think it's just a misdemeanor, it's a little thing, that's going to follow you for life. Mm-hmm. And in this case, it's sad, but it literally has followed them throughout the prison system. So it can be something that takes your freedom away. It can be something that closes doors to you in terms of job opportunities and that sort of thing. But none of us should ever take the legal system lightly, because
that's right.
It can change your life irreparably.
Better safe than sorry.
That's right.
Definitely better safe than sorry. So, I want to thank, like I said, I want to thank Mr. Lamonte Armstrong for being on the show today. I mean, 17 years in prison, and, now he done got out and got his life straight, and he's trying to get back on the right road to recovery. He's doing a great job. I want to thank him for being on. Miss Hannan, I definitely want to thank you. And you're welcome to come back again on our next, exoneree show, so you can definitely, because you'll have more information by then for us when we do this next show. So do you want to come back through?
Yes, because I still have to talk about Gregory.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll definitely do that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely make sure that we do that. And like I said, Warren, I mean, you know what she's going through right now, and I'm sure you can, have a little conference with her, and we can help her out with Gregory. So we're gonna keep us going, Miss Hannan, after the show. Okay. So this ain't gonna just stop for you. We don't do that. We don't do things for just a show. We don't do it for ratings. We do it for love, and we do it to definitely make sure that we help somebody overcome a situation, come to grips with a situation. That's all we can promise. Those two things, right, Warren?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
So on you. Okay. So you want to flag your business one more time?
Sure. I'm Warren Geller. I'm a partner at Cofer Geller in Durham. We can be reached at 631-6111. So if you want a free consultation on a case, give us a call, or you can email me at wgeller@vegasdefense.com.
Okay. Now we got 2 minutes, so we're going to take a minute of it between me and you real quick, Warren.
Sure.
Now that you've been coming to these shows with me and you've been seeing how hard I've been going at these shows, what do you think about the shows?
I think it's an excellent way to bring the community some knowledge about what's going on by bringing things to their radio, people, guests, lawyers, doctors, whoever in the community is relevant to the topic you're talking about, and allow them an opportunity to kind of hear from the specialists, from the people there, and then also take the circumstances of your guests and have the specialists, the experts talk about it so everyone can kind of get a perspective of how that might apply to their life and what they can do with that.
Right. And you think this is a great, powerful show?
Absolutely. Okay. I wouldn't come back if I didn't think so.
That's right. So that's why I was asking you, because the point I'm making is I want our listeners out there to definitely support the movement and what I'm trying to do. But most of all, support the message. Because this is a worldly message that I'm putting out right here. Nobody is immune to this. So to everybody out there, I want to say thank you for supporting me. Warren, thank you again, Miss Hannan. And, Mr. Armstrong, thank you all, Jeffrey Deskovic. And until next time, be safe, think once, think twice, and always, always know that we can't get over anything that we go through.